Story 1. I recently learned this and it changed everything. Press the Windows key plus V to open the clipboard history with the last 20 items. Game changer. Story 2. Comments here make me think I'm the only person who makes mistakes. I use Ctrl-Z every day. Story 3. If you accidentally closed a tab, press the Control key, the Shift key, and the T key for an instant rescue. Magic every time. Story 4. Ctrl-Shift-V. I want to paste numbers from one spreadsheet to another without altering the formatting or copying formulas. Story 5. Control plus left arrow or right arrow to jump between words. Control plus Shift plus left arrow or right arrow to highlight words. Control plus backspace to delete words. Control plus period to select emojis. One I recently learned. Control plus semicolon in Excel to insert the current date. Story 6. Not a keyboard shortcut, but I programmed one of the thumb buttons on my mouse to paste, and I use it constantly. Story 7. Press the Windows key and a number key to open the corresponding program on the taskbar. Story 8. I have to read online medical files as a physician. I use the Ctrl-F keyboard shortcut to find keywords instead of slogging through dozens of pages. Story 9. Press the Control, Shift, and Escape keys to open Task Manager. You can quickly close applications and check your internet connection, random access memory usage, and other system resources. Story 10. Ctrl-Z and its opposite Ctrl-Y. Also Ctrl-T opens a new tab and Ctrl-Shift-T reopens the last closed tab. I use them multiple times daily. Story 11. I use the Windows key with the arrow keys to quickly resize the active window. At work I have two desktops. Desktop 1 is for work stuff. Desktop 2 is for other tasks. I often use the Windows key with Tab, laughing out loud. Story 12. Press Command-Shift-2 on the Mac operating system to use Text Sniper. It instantly lets you grab any text from your screen, even from images or videos, which feels like magic when you need to copy something that normally isn't selectable. Story 13. Alternate D goes straight to letting you type in the address bar. Also, Control-Enter submits your Reddit post. Story 14. Windows key. I can search for funny animated images to annoy my coworkers in chats and emails. Story 15. G minor to be major without first crossing into A. I know it is unsettling, but something about it just slaps. Story 16. Use Alternate plus Tab or Alternate plus Shift plus Tab to cycle through open windows forward and backward. Edited to use Alternate instead of Control. Story 17. My work dock is unreliable and will not recognize one of my monitors until I press the Control plus Shift plus Windows key plus the B key to reset the video driver every day. Story 18. Press the Windows key and L to lock the computer anytime I step away from my laptop at work. It is not because I am a good company man, but because my coworkers are a bunch of delinquents. Story 19. Press the Windows key and L to lock my computer. Press Ctrl and A to select all. Story 20. Not the most useful but underrated. Press the Windows key and the V key to open the clipboard history. Story 21. Alternate tab or Command tab. I use it dozens of times per hour on both Windows and Macintosh. Story 22. Windows key plus Alternate key plus B toggles high dynamic range. I have used this many times to turn high dynamic range on and off for games and videos. For some reason, Microsoft has not implemented a way to automatically switch between standard dynamic range and high dynamic range for specific applications, so I have to switch it manually. I dislike how Windows tone maps standard dynamic range content into high dynamic range. This is not how game and video creators intended their content to be viewed. Story 23. Control-Tab or Control-V. The day I learned about Control-Z saved me an entire mailbox. Story 24. Does anyone still use Shift-Delete to cut? Every now and then I do. Also, my laptop keyboard does not have a submenu key, so Shift Function 10 is frequently used. Story 25. Control-Shift-B to paste and remove formatting. Control-Backspace to delete whole words. Use these shortcuts often for work. Story 26. The real answers are the core ones. Copy, paste, and undo. The most underrated is the Windows plus Shift plus S shortcut, or opening the snipping tool. It lets you drag to capture an image of a specific area of the screen and copy it to the clipboard. If you want to show someone a glimpse of data without sharing a full table, this is ideal. If you need to show how to do something, a picture often saves time explaining. If you need to show only part of the screen while excluding other content, you do not need to open an editing program. It saves time, is easy to use, and is the best new command I have adopted in recent years. Story 27. Use Ctrl-X and Ctrl-V when editing documents. They perform cut and paste rather than the classic Ctrl-C copy. Story 28. Press the Windows key and the D key to go instantly to the desktop. Press the Windows key and the D key again to restore your Windows. Story 29. Press F4 in Microsoft Excel to repeat the last action. Change the format in one cell, go to another cell, and press F4 to apply the same formatting. Story 30. Control plus Shift plus V to paste without formatting. If pasted text has the wrong background color, is too large, or uses a different font, use this shortcut. It works in most apps but does not work in Microsoft Outlook. Control plus Shift plus T to reopen recently closed browser tabs. This restores the last closed tab if you closed the wrong one. Control plus Z to undo the last change. It is a lifesaver when you do something by accident. Windows key plus L quickly locks your computer. In Microsoft Excel, to select a range without dragging, click a cell, then press Ctrl plus Shift plus an arrow key in the direction you want to go. It will stop at the last non-empty cell in that direction. Press the middle mouse button to open a link in a new tab. To close a tab quickly, hover over the tab and press the middle mouse button. To close multiple tabs, hover over the leftmost tab you want to close and repeatedly press the middle mouse button. Press the middle mouse button on a web page and move your mouse up or down to auto-scroll. The farther you move from the click point, the faster the page will scroll. Story 31. Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V all day. My job depends heavily on copying and pasting, so it has become the standard position for my left hand. Story 32. Press Ctrl-Shift-T. Reopen the last closed tab, or reopen all previously open tabs if the browser closed. Story 33. For those with multiple monitors, the Windows key and an arrow key snap windows to a partial screen. 1/2, 1/4, full, or minimized. I use it all the time. Story 34. Press Ctrl-Shift-T to open your last closed tab. You can reopen tabs closed earlier. Story 35. On a Windows personal computer, turn on Clipboard History in the Control panel. Then press the Windows key and the V key instead of the Control key and the V key to paste. You can thank me later. Story 36. DD deletes a line and adds its content to the clipboard buffer. Story 37. Press the Windows key and the L key to instantly lock your personal computer. Useful in a job where you work with client information, and great for other occasions. Story 38. I use the Windows plus D keyboard shortcut every day. Since upgrading to Windows 11, the two Windows keys on my keyboard no longer work, even after trying everything I could. Story 39. I use the Ctrl-T and Ctrl-W keyboard shortcuts to open and close tabs more quickly. Story 40. Windows key plus Shift plus left or right arrow key. This moves the active window to the monitor to the left or right of the current monitor. Story 41. Windows key plus number key. For example, I have Windows Terminal pinned as the first app icon on the taskbar. Pressing the Windows key plus 1 launches the terminal. My email app is pinned as the second icon. Pressing the Windows key plus 2 launches the email app. I keep the first few apps pinned in the same order on my home and work computers. This lets me use muscle memory to quickly launch common apps. Note: this uses the Windows key, not the Alt key. Story 42. Press the Alt key and the print screen key to capture a screenshot of the monitor you are focused on. Story 43. Press Ctrl plus Tab to switch between tabs, and press the Windows key and D to minimize all open applications and folders. I do this when my boss comes while I am watching YouTube, laughing loudly. Story 44. Shift Control L creates bullet points. Shift J opens the downloads folder. I learned it this week. It saves me tens of clicks per day. Story 45. I use Control F4 to close a browser tab multiple times a day. Story 46. I made an auto hotkey script for Select All From, and I press it about 100 times a day. Story 47. Control Page Down and Control Page Up switch tabs in one window. This works the same as Microsoft Excel in Google Chrome. Story 48. Control Shift T. I close important tabs all the time. It has saved me many minutes of going back through 10 different web pages and documents to find the right one. Story 49. Press the Windows key and the V key to see all the items I have copied to the clipboard, so I do not have to go back and copy them again. Story 50. Control plus Shift plus L. Use it to autofill details with my password manager. Windows key plus Shift plus S. Take a screenshot. I now have it on a button on my mouse. Windows key plus Shift plus T. Grab text from an image using Microsoft PowerToys. It is not perfect, but it is useful most of the time. Control plus T. Open a new tab. Story 51. Shift F3 toggles text between all capital letters, initial capitals for each word, and lowercase. If you start typing in lowercase and later realize part of the text is in capitals because you cannot look at the screen while typing, highlight the text and press Shift F3 to fix it. Story 52. Command-C and Command-V. A game changer for copying and pasting large amounts of text. Story 53. I work in technical support and I use most of these, but I have not seen anyone use my favorite. Pressing the Windows key, the Shift key, and the S key brings up the screenshot capture snipping tool. Story 54. Just going to say, if you ever want to avoid doing work on older devices running Apple's iPhone operating system, press the Apple key plus A or the Apple key plus O. If you know, you know. Story 55. On a Mac, when writing an email or a document, holding the Option key and pressing Delete removes the entire word. On a Windows personal computer, I believe it is Control plus Delete. Story 56. Alternate key plus Tab key. Windows key plus Tab key. Control key plus C key. Windows key plus V key. Control key plus Shift key plus Escape key. Alternate key plus Function key F4. Story 57. Control T opens a new tab. Control W closes the current tab. Control N opens a new browser window. My favorite combination is Control C then Control T then Control V. It copies text, opens a new tab, and pastes it into the search bar. I use that all the time. The Windows key and the arrow keys move windows around. The Windows key and L lock the computer. On my mouse, I have a side button mapped to Control that I can use with the shortcuts above. Holding Control while scrolling zooms in or out on websites. Another side button lets me change the volume directly from my mouse without clicking anywhere. A third button cycles through audio outputs so I can switch between headphones and speakers. Story 58. Press Ctrl-Shift-T to reopen closed tabs on every browser I have tried, except for incognito windows that do not keep a history. Story 59. I pressed Ctrl-S until the S key started to give up on me. Story 60. There are so many on here that I did not know about. I want to try them, but I am also wary. I am sure at least one of them will do something awful to my computer. Story 61. Press the Super key and 1 to open the terminal. I am not sure whether this is the default for all Linux distributions. Story 62. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus W key opens Microsoft Word. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus X key opens Microsoft Excel. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus P key opens Microsoft PowerPoint. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus O key opens Microsoft Outlook. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus T key opens Microsoft Teams. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus D key opens Microsoft OneDrive. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows plus N key opens Microsoft OneNote. Control plus Alternate plus Shift plus Windows opens the Microsoft 365 Office Launcher. Story 63. Personal favorite. Windows key plus semicolon opens a small window for emojis. Windows key plus L locks your computer. Very handy at work when you leave your station. Control plus T opens a new tab in a browser. Control plus Shift plus T reopens the last tab you closed. If you accidentally close the entire browser, opening a new one and using this combination will reopen all tabs that were open. Control plus numbers, for example, Control plus 1, Control plus 2, Control plus 3. Select browser tabs from left to right. Control plus 3 makes the third tab active. Control plus backspace deletes one word at a time instead of characters. Tab key moves the cursor to the next text field when filling out forms, including online forms and portable document format files. Shift plus tab moves back one field. Using the tab key is faster than switching repeatedly between the keyboard and the mouse. Story 64. Control C and Control V. It feels much faster to copy and paste using those keys than using the mouse. Laughing out loud. Also alternate tab. Story 65. Windows key plus D. My laptop keeps hanging 1,000 times a day. Story 66. I work in information technology. I am probably pressing the spacebar to stop sleep mode when I am on my smartphone. Story 67. For me, it would be the Control key, the Windows key, and the left and right arrow keys to switch desktops, but I have mapped those to my mouse for easy switching. I also use the Control key and the Enter key to add .com at the end of web addresses when browsing. Story 68. Press Windows Shift and an arrow key to send the focused window to the next monitor. Story 69. Alternate plus Tab. Windows key plus Tab. Control plus Shift plus Escape. Windows key plus D. Windows key plus L. Control plus C and Control plus V. Control plus Insert and Shift plus Insert. In Microsoft Excel, alternate plus Enter. Control plus Page Up. And Control plus Page Down. Control plus left arrow and Control plus right arrow for jumping words. Combine with Shift to select whole words. I use these daily. The most useful is alternate plus tab. Story 70. I have to buy a new keyboard every year because I break the spacebar. Story 71. Press Shift Command T. I have 15 tabs open on my computer for school, and I often accidentally close them. Story 72. I do nearly everything with mouse clicks, so my most frequently used keyboard action is pressing the power button. Story 73. Besides the obvious ones like Control-Z, Control-C, Control-V, and alternate tab, and many work-specific shortcuts for Adobe software. I recommend Control-T in a browser to open a new tab, Control-W to close the current tab, Control-Shift-T to reopen the most recently closed tab, and Control-Tab and Control-Shift-Tab to cycle through tabs. I do not use this one often, but Control-Shift-Escape opens Task Manager directly instead of pressing Control-Alternate-Delete and then choosing Task Manager. Story 74. Not a shortcut, but I rarely see colleagues do this. Using the End and Home keys to navigate within sentences, formulas, web addresses, and so on. Story 75. Windows key plus period opens a small emoji picker wherever you are typing. Story 76. Control-Shift-Escape opens the Task Manager. An added bonus. If you use your left hand, your thumb can press Control and Shift while your index finger naturally presses Escape. Feels good, man. Story 77. Windows key plus the alternate key plus the break key. This is the quickest method I know to reach the computer information, settings, and management screen. It is where you change the computer name, join a domain, check activation status, and so on. Granted, this is not useful for most people, but if you perform this 30 times a day for work, the shortcut saves a significant amount of time. Story 78. Pressing the Windows key together with the up, down, left, or right arrow key has different effects. In earlier versions of Windows, it rotated the monitor display. In newer versions, it snaps the current window into specific areas of the desktop, which is much more useful. Story 79. Not by default. If you install PowerToys on Windows, You can capture and copy text from an image on your screen that you normally could not copy directly. There are also many other niche but useful keyboard shortcuts. Story 80. Good old Windows key plus R. Execute that quick command, open some obscure Microsoft Management Console, launch a shell. It's so ingrained in me now that I use it for simple reboots instead of futzing with the mouse. Use the shutdown command with the R option and the T option set to 3 seconds. Story 81. If you accidentally close a browser with multiple tabs, open a blank browser window and press Ctrl-Shift-T to restore them. Story 82. Press Ctrl, Shift, and T to reopen closed browser tabs without searching your history or retyping the web address. Story 83. While I am not sure I would call it most useful, one feature I recently learned that is very useful is Control Backspace. Instead of removing one letter, it removes the whole word. It also works with the arrow keys for navigating text and with the delete key. Story 84. In a web browser, press Ctrl-L to go to the address bar so you can start typing a website address. As a bonus, in the address bar type foobar and then press Ctrl-Enter. That will automatically add .com and take you to foobar.com. Story 85. On Mac, use the Option key and the arrow keys to skip between YouTube chapters. Story 86. Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, Ctrl-Shift-V, Windows V, Alternate Tab, Alternate Shift Tab, Windows Tab, Windows Shift arrow left, Windows Shift arrow right, Windows Shift S. Story 87. Press the Ctrl, Shift, and T keys to reopen tabs in Firefox that I closed accidentally. Story 88. Press the Windows key and the D key when you have a million windows open. It minimizes everything. Story 89. Press Windows plus Shift plus the arrow key to move windows around. I have 3 monitors and I mainly use 2 of them unless I need the third or I am sitting across the room. The third monitor is a television mounted above the other 2. And it is simple to move a window without turning the television on. Story 90. Shift Print Screen is basically the Windows Shift S shortcut for Linux. It lets me take a screenshot without capturing all 3 monitors. Story 91. Press the alternate key and the tab key to switch between open windows. This is useful if you play games. Story 92. I still know people who do not know cut, copy, and paste. I use it multiple times a day. Story 93. Press the Ctrl and F keys to search for a word or phrase on the website you are viewing. Get straight to the point instead of sifting through rambling recipe websites or clickbait articles. Story 94. Press Ctrl-Shift-Escape to open the Task Manager in Windows 11. Story 95. Press the Windows key and the V key. This opens the clipboard history and lets you pin items so they remain after restarting your computer. Story 96. Press the Ctrl, Shift, and T keys to reopen the last tab you were using in your browser. Story 97. Ctrl F. Great for finding a specific topic in a really long article. Also fun to use to find the frequency of different words or letters. Story 98. Press the Windows key plus Shift plus S to capture a quick screenshot. Press the Windows key plus Shift plus T to extract text from the screen using optical character recognition, even from images. This uses the PowerToys text extractor. Press the Windows key plus 1 to open the first application on the taskbar, the Windows key plus 2 to open the second, and so on. Press the Windows key and type an application name to launch that application or open a file. Press the Windows key together with the backtick key to open a Quake-style terminal. Press the Windows key plus V to open the Clipboard Manager. Press the Windows key plus Shift plus V to open Advanced Paste, a PowerToys tool that lets you manipulate clipboard content, send text to artificial intelligence, and perform other actions. Story 99. On my Android phone and iPad keyboards, I hold down the spacebar to move the cursor. Take some practice, but it is much easier for correcting typos than tapping to place the cursor on a small screen. Story 100. The obvious answer is Ctrl-V. Most people couldn't live without it. Story 101. Ctrl-R. I use this daily, especially when my screen freezes. Story 102. Some widely known and some lesser known shortcuts. Control-C and Control-V for copy and paste. Tab and Shift-Tab for shifting lines up and down. Control-F to find text. Story 103. Press the Windows key, the Shift key, and an arrow key to move an application to the other monitor in the direction you press. Story 104. Not sure whether it is a Windows shortcut or specific to the Chrome or Chromium browser. Alternate key and left arrow to go back. Alternate key and right arrow to go forward. Story 105. I think this works across the entire Microsoft Office suite. The function key F12 opens the Save As dialog box without requiring you to navigate through cluttered menus. Story 106. Not a keyboard shortcut, but I press the middle mouse button often to open links in a new tab. Story 107. I use Control-V and Control-C constantly. They are the first keys to have their labels worn off my keyboard. Story 108. Binding Control-S to strike through in Microsoft Word. I use that a lot for my job. I manually save anyway, so I never needed the default setting. Story 109. I often use the alternate tab key to switch between File Explorer, Documents, and Programs. Story 110. Press the Windows key, the Control key, the Shift key, and the B key to reset your video card. This often fixes video issues in video games. Story 111. Control-C and Control-V are common, but the shortcut I use most for work is alternate tab to switch between windows quickly. Story 112. Press the Windows key and the V key to open the clipboard history when I need to paste something that was not the last item I copied. Story 113. Press Control-Shift-V because I do not want to copy a link. I want the text. Press Control-Shift-Enter. It also comes in handy daily. Story 114. Double tap the Control key. It darkens the screen and highlights the cursor, making it easy to find. However, you need Windows PowerToys installed and enabled for it to work. You should have it installed anyway. I am stunned it is not part of the default toolset. Story 115. Control-Z for undo, Control-C for copy, and Control-V for paste. I have a 65% keyboard, so I use function and up arrow for home. Windows L locks the computer. I use alternate and tab because I have 10 windows open at any given time for work. Holding alternate and tab shows which window I need. Story 116. Press Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste. Press Windows L to lock the computer. Press Windows Shift-S to take a partial screenshot. Story 117. Control-S. Save often. It's so ingrained in my behavior that I get annoyed when typing in a web form and the Save Web Page dialog appears because I apparently tried to save my progress. Story 118. Post saved. There are so many useful things I should be using. Use the Windows key plus V if you cut and paste a lot. Story 119. Press the Alt, O, C, and the keys to expand all Excel rows and columns to fit the data. Story 120. Press Control-S repeatedly. Please do not say it is default now. I am old school. Story 121. Press the function key F2 to edit details in Microsoft Excel and to rename files in Windows File Explorer. Story 122. Press Windows Control-V. I switch frequently between headphones and speakers. Also, press Windows X, then up, right, down, and enter to shut down the personal computer. Story 123. Pressing the alternate key and the F4 key was a great shortcut for duplicating items in RuneScape after dropping them on the ground. Story 124. Press the Windows key and R to open the Run dialog. You also need to know the names or commands for whatever you are trying to access. For example, encpa.cpl opens the Network Connections Control Panel, and mstsc opens Remote Desktop Connection. Microsoft can change menus, hide features, or make the user interface difficult to use. I know the commands to access the tools I need. Story 125. Pressing the Windows key and V opens your clipboard, showing the last 25 items you copied and allowing you to pin frequently used items. I use it every day and tell people about it. They act as if I have hacked the Matrix. Story 126. Press the Control, Shift, Windows, and alternate keys and the letter L to immediately open LinkedIn. Story 127. Press the Windows key together with Shift and the left or right arrow key to move a window quickly between monitors. Very useful. Story 128. Press the Windows key and the L key when I have to walk away from my desk to cry or scream into the abyss. Story 129. Press the Control, Shift, and V keys simultaneously to paste without formatting. This is useful when you copy content from websites that use a different font or size than your document. Press the Control and Space keys on a highlighted section of text to remove formatting if you have already pasted. Story 130. Control-Shift-T reopens the most recently closed tab. Story 131. Press the Windows key and the V key to open the clipboard history. Press the Windows key and an arrow key to snap the active window to the side or corner of the screen. Press the Windows key, the Shift key, and an arrow key to move a window to another monitor. Story 132. Most often, by far, I use Control-C and Control-V. A slightly less well-known shortcut I use is the Windows key plus V. It opens a history of my clipboard so I can go back to a previous copy and paste if I did not paste something correctly. I also use the Windows key plus period a lot for emojis in Microsoft Teams chats and emails. I also use the Windows key plus L to lock my computer when I get up. Story 133. Function key F5 does not count because it is an actual key. Story 134. Windows key plus V opens the clipboard history. Similar to the Control key plus V for paste, it lets you quickly paste an earlier copied item when the most recent copy is not the one you want. Story 135. Press the Control key, the Windows key, and the V key. This opens the clipboard with everything you have copied recently. It is an absolute game changer for live spreadsheets. Story 136. Control-C and Control-V. I use them hundreds of times per day in the course of my work. Story 137. This is unusual. Windows shortcuts have an extra feature in the properties called Keyboard Shortcut. You can assign either a function key or a combination such as Control plus Alternate plus a letter, or Control plus Shift plus a letter. Normally, you must keep the shortcut on the desktop for it to work, but you can also place the shortcut inside the Start menu and it will still work. To open the Start menu folder, type Shell Start menu in the Run dialog box. The Start menu folder will open. You can keep the shortcut in any folder there, then close the folder, and the keyboard shortcut should still work. Sometimes it has issues and can conflict with other shortcuts, but for me it has been reliable for daily use. I use it to open commonly used documents with a single function key as well as commonly used programs. Story 138. Press the Windows key and V to view your Control-C history and select more than just your most recent copy. Story 139. Press the Windows key and the E key to open Windows Explorer. I am shocked that so many people at my work do not know that. Story 140. Pressing the alternate key and entering 0150 on the numeric keypad produces a long dash. Pressing the alternate key and entering 0174 on the numeric keypad produces the registered trademark symbol. You can access most American Standard Code for information interchange glyphs that way. Story 141. If you use the Windows pre-installed calculator a lot, pressing the Escape key clears all numbers on its screen. Story 142. Windows E is probably my outright favorite, followed by Alternate Tab and Control Tab, because they save so much mouse work. Windows D is super handy too. Control B, Control U, Control I, Control J, Control X, Control C, and Control V are completely second nature. Control open bracket or Control close bracket, and Control with the scroll wheel. To be honest, in my sector these shortcuts alone are enough that when I use a computer that belongs to someone else, they look at me like a wizard. Story 143. Press the Windows key and the L key to lock my computer at work. Press the Alt key and the Tab key to switch quickly between windows. Story 144. For general computer use, I would say the following shortcuts are common. Control plus print screen. My shortcut for taking a screenshot with a program called ShareX. Control plus F find. Control plus Z undo. Control plus S save. Alternate plus Tab switch between open applications. My most used shortcuts are for one specific program, Sublime Text, which is primarily used in the software development industry. Control plus P, find or open a file in the project. Control plus R, go to a symbol, for example, a function in the current file. Control plus Shift plus R, go to a symbol, for example, a function in the project. Control plus Shift plus F, search across the project. Control plus Shift plus P, open the command toolbox. Story 145. It was not a keyboard shortcut. I set my phone to take screenshots by tapping the back. I don't have the instructions, but it's an iPhone. Story 146. Basically, everything I use has already been answered, so I will recommend Power Toys. I set up a shortcut to pin a window so it is always in front. It is very useful. Story 147. I have a Keychron keyboard with macro keys. I set the macro keys to store the passwords I use for home and for work. This saves me hours per week and prevents fumbling with the very long passwords my company requires. Story 148. When you have multiple boxes to fill in, you can move from one to the next by pressing the Tab key. Pressing the Shift key and the Tab key returns you to the previous field. Story 149. The operating system key and the arrow keys are used often. Use them to minimize windows, move windows left and right, and maximize windows. Story 150. Press the Control and L keys in your browser to quickly access the address bar. Story 151. My left and right scroll wheel clicks are mapped to Control plus page up and Control plus page down, which move the focus to the previous or next tab. This means I do not have to use the keyboard or the mouse pointer to change tabs. Story 152. It is hard to choose just one. I probably use Control C or Control X, then Control V a lot. I also use the Control, Alternate, and Delete keys fairly regularly. Story 153. Press Command Control Q to lock the screen. It may be my most used shortcut when I'm working in an open plan office. Story 154. Control and Shift with the arrow keys in text documents quickly highlight text one word at a time, starting at your cursor location. For example, pressing Control and Shift with the left arrow 3 times will highlight the 3 words to the left of your cursor. Story 155. Control-Shift-T reopens your last closed browser tab. Control-Tab cycles forward through your tabs. Control-Shift-Tab cycles backward through your tabs. Windows V opens the clipboard and displays the history of copied items. Control-L highlights your address bar in File Explorer and in your web browser. Control-E opens File Explorer. Story 156. Use Command-W on the Mac operating system, especially with shady sites and pop-up windows. Story 157. Press the function key F2 to rename files or to activate a cell in Microsoft Excel. You do not need to double-click a cell. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.